Episode 78, Big Wave Surfing Legend, Maya Gabeira. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Maya Gabeira. Maya is a Brazilian big wave surfer. She's most known for having surfed a 73.5-foot high wave in Nazaré, Portugal in February 2020, recorded by Guinness World Records as the biggest wave ever surfed by a female. She has received numerous accolades, including the ESPY Award for Best Female Action Sports Athlete, and is considered one of the best female surfers in the world, as well as one of the most influential female surfers of all time. Maya, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I was just thinking about something as you jumped on here. Are you by any chance familiar with something in America called Shark Week?
Yeah, Shark Week, yes.
You've heard of Shark Week?
Yeah, it's a TV show.
Well, yes, but it's way more than just a shark show. This is an entire week of nonstop, round-the-clock shark shows on the Discovery Channel. It's become pretty much a cultural phenomenon here. Anyway, I ask because it's by far my favorite time of year, and the week-long shark extravaganza just wrapped up the other day.
You love Shark Week?
Oh, I'm completely addicted. But it got me to thinking, you've surfed in Australia, you've surfed in South Africa, Hawaii, plenty of shark-infested areas. Have you ever had any close encounters?
Yeah, I've had, I've seen a couple big-ish sharks. I don't know if they were tigers, could have been tiger, feeding off a lineup we were surfing at. We all jumped on our skis. Luckily, we were on skis and we bailed. Nobody wanted to surf anymore. And that was I think the closest and more violent and in their environment, feeding and eating something. I couldn't really define what it was. But, I'm pretty scared of shark infested areas. I'm not I don't think about them often as a threat. But I know that if you're surfing in places like South Africa and South Australia and Hawaii these days, it's something to think about, when you're doing that very late afternoon session by yourself or very early morning.
So I know these days you're living in Nazaré, this small fishing village in Portugal, with, of course, some of the biggest waves in the world. Just curious, is there much going on outside of surfing there?
It's a pretty mellow town, to be honest. It's good for sports, for outdoor sports. It has great mountain bike trails. It has, lots of nature, some ocean sports, some wind sports. The water is always cold, so wetsuit always, all year round. And I just, summer is a time that I try to travel for surfing. And when I'm home, I train and I do other things. And I take, a little bit of a holiday from surfing. And then when winter starts, which is around mid-September, we start getting waves again. And that's when I switch my focus and I stay a lot at home and I surf a lot and I train a lot. So I like to have that 6 months more strict schedule at home and then have, a few months in summer where I'm completely off schedule and I'm doing whatever I want.
So I want to rewind the clock to little Maya growing up in Brazil. Your father was one of the founding members of the Green Party of Brazil, and as a politician took on controversial positions around prostitution, same-sex marriage, and cannabis, just to name a few. And he was also a former member of the revolutionary movement called MR8, which was the group that kidnapped a U.S. ambassador in Brazil. I'm wondering, Maya, if any of that sort of anti-establishment, renegade kind of thinking might have rubbed off on you in any way.
Yes, I think a lot of my dad was passed on to me, and by example, by just having a source of inspiration close by and seeing his passion for certain things, for humanity, for his work, for the path less traveled, and being, a visionary in the environmental causes, and being like very early in pointing the issues and being very worried to study them and to keep learning about it and spreading and doing certain things in politics that would help our environmental crisis that we, just deepen every year. So yeah, there was a lot that I learned from my dad, but it's, we have absolutely different lives and we chose, very different paths, but they have similar characteristics and points, that collide.
Well, meanwhile, your mother was a renowned fashion designer. So both your parents were pretty well known and pretty well respected in their fields. Did you feel any extra pressure at a young age to achieve something great one day?
I don't think I felt pressure, but I felt the need to leave Brazil and to do it on my own terms and to find something that was true to myself and to build my name from zero. It was always different if everyone knows your last name and they attach to you a lot of different things, and then your first name and your own person gets a little lost. So I really didn't like that tension when I was young, when I started surfing and competing in amateur contests and stuff. When I was 16, 17, like I didn't like that tension and the fact that my last name brought so many, even if they were good, well, they were controversial too, because politics is always controversial, it's always difficult. So I felt, a bit exposed, and I wanted to create something that was completely mine. So I think the fact that my dad mostly was so established and well known, I felt the urge to leave and to go somewhere where I could be just me.
I believe your parents divorced when you were just 11 or 12.
I was 12, yeah.
So do you recall how you processed that at that time? I mean, that's pretty young to go through something like that.
I recall how they broke the news. I have that like vision. We're in the living room. They ask us out and they tell us that they're divorcing. And of course, the fact that I can see it kind of in my mind, I can tell you that was a huge impact on me, because I rarely remember scenes like that, especially from that young. So it hit me really hard. And I just wasn't in an age that was easy to accept, or maybe I wasn't the kind of kid that would easily accept it. And it made things a little bit more challenging in the years after that.
Challenging in what regard?
I just became very rebellious. I didn't want to go by my mom's rules. I, was always questioning it, was very not into school and I just wanted to do my own thing at a very young age. I was very premature. I always had older friends. I wanted to do what my older friends did. I wanted to have a lot of freedom. And, I was very young in a big city. So my mom wasn't, she didn't feel like it was safe.
You also suffered from severe asthma as a child and were often hospitalized, right?
Yeah, I was hospitalized a few times with my asthma, even as an adult. And yeah, when I was a child, it was heavier. It was harder.
So I'm curious what effect that might have had on your psyche. Like, do you think it made you feel weak and vulnerable? Or perhaps did it even build strength and resilience inside of you?
I think first makes you weak and vulnerable, makes you dependent, makes you insecure. It's very unsettling if you have something that you don't know exactly when it's going to sneak up on you and when you're going to get ill and like who's going to help you, So for a long time as a child, I was very attached to my mom because she was the one to always help me with my asthma and be with me and know what to do. And so, yeah, but I think at some point when I was able to grow a little bit older in my teenage years, I started to be more aware of how to turn that vulnerability into a strength. And I think that's when surfing came in. I started, being in the ocean and exercising my lungs and really kind of connecting with my body in a stronger way. I think through my body and through making my body strong, eventually through my teenage years, 16, 17, training, surfing, competing, that's when I started to turn that into some kind of strength, because I knew what it was like to be vulnerable, and I was creating my own strength, and that was empowering.
When you were younger, your mom had enrolled you in dance classes, but I think you were just 13 or so when you gave up the dance shoes in exchange for a surfboard, and it seems like you got addicted pretty quickly.
Yeah, really quickly.
So what was the allure for you? Do you remember?
I think it was the freedom. I think it was just the unknown, the challenge, the boys, like every cool boy was a surfer, and like I didn't see any cool girls doing it.
I'm guessing there weren't many girls surfing at the time.
No, no, no. It was all boys clubs, especially in Rio. And I just felt like, why there's no girls there? Like that always I just thought, wow, like girls that can do what they can do, that would be like the coolest girl. And I just had that concept that to be a surfer girl would be the coolest thing in the world. And I think that was one of the motivations, that I wanted to paddle out by myself, understand the ocean, deal with it, surf with the boys, come in and just be a part of what they were doing out there.
Just thinking through the timeline here, this newfound love for surfing was only about a year removed from your parents' divorce. Do you think surfing might have been a way for you to channel some of your anger and grief?
Yeah, absolutely. Surfing came into my life in great timing. Just a year or so after my parents' divorce, I was really looking for something, because I had quit already dancing. I quit dancing kind of, just after they divorced, and I was super, super into dancing. I was actually something I really enjoyed and did with a lot of enthusiasm, and actually took it very serious. And so when I was, that 1 year or 6 months without a sport, it was really weird for me. Like I wasn't the type of person that could go without a sport. Like I just needed that structure, that discipline, that focus, that goal. Like I just craved it since a young age. And I think that's why, ballet was so strong. Then when I didn't have anything, it was like a lack of something. And then when I went into surfing, it was just head first. I never really looked back. It was like, okay, this is my thing and I'm going to do it intensively.
Well, speaking of which, you were just 17 when you moved to Hawaii on your own and got a job as a waitress so you could spend as much of your time surfing as possible. So I take it going to college was never an option for you. Were your parents pretty supportive, or you're just skipping school like that, following your passion? Or did they, think you'd sort of lost your mind?
Yeah, they were worried for sure. But I did finish high school in a weird way by doing exams. And so the rule was I could leave when I finished high school. And that's what I did. I finished high school and left the next month. The other rule was I was to come back in a year, which mom didn't believe. Dad kind of believed. I knew it wasn't going to happen. But, I thought that was a good compromise. And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to travel. I'm going to surf. And then I'm going to try and make up my mind of what I'm going to do. Like I cannot go to university without liking any subject on university. Like it won't work. So the subject I like is not on university. So I was like, first going to study my subject, my very favorite subject in Hawaii. And then I get back to this school thing.
Were you focused on making a future career out of it at the time? Or was it simply you love surfing and, what's the best place in the world to go surfing as much as you could?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. It was, I love surfing. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to surf and I'm going to see what's out there in the world, for me. Like, I don't know what it's out there. And I really wanted to speak fluent English. That was like a major goal for me. I had lived young. When I was 15, I did an exchange student program in Australia, and I just felt the need to speak English and to communicate with more cultures than just Brazil. Like that was my thing. And so there was like, it was just all pros for me. So I went, and when I got there, you know, I obviously felt like I was in the right place. I made the right choice, and I got a job that I didn't need to speak a lot. I memorized all the plates and the things that I had to say. It was a Brazilian restaurant, so they accepted the fact that I was Brazilian and was adapting to, you know, life abroad. And I surfed all my hours off, and it worked well.
Yeah, apparently it worked well.
Apparently it worked well.
So this is a quote of yours that I found really interesting. You said that surfing picks you up, but also beats you down. It gives you everything, but also takes everything out of you. Can you unpack that for me a little bit?
Well, I think for many, many years, while I was trying to reach career goals and things, I was very, very sharp focused on what I was doing. And with that, you know, all my emotional charge, everything that I felt was through surfing, because that's all I did. And that's all my life surrounded off. I had no balance. And I think it's normal for young athletes, you know, they're trying to reach their goals and they go 100% because our careers, they're, you know, 10-year, 15, 20-year span. And if you don't give everything, you're going to sit at some point and regret, you know. So I was just very, very deeply involved with my craft, and the ocean, you know, is like, you don't always win. You lose pretty hard when you lose, you know. It's like this very humbling workspace in which the ocean is just always, always, always stronger than you, always, always, always ahead of you. So it's like you're constantly working with something that's much greater than yourself. So it's always humbling, but also very rewarding. And that's why, you know, people take the beating and they try to pick themselves up, because they don't want to give up on that sensation. You know, they want to be able to go back out there and to live those things again, and surf waves and experience the ocean and be in that energy.
Yeah, sort of reminds me of the idiom in gambling that the house always wins. You know, same thing here. You play with the ocean enough times, eventually you're going to lose.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So for clarification, not everybody, of course, surfs that listens to the podcast. You're more of what's called a tow surfer, which is where you're towed out to a massive wave by a jet ski, as opposed to manually paddling out to meet the wave. Is that because these huge waves are moving so fast that you can't really make it happen if you paddle? Or is it just sort of making it easy for you so you don't exhaust yourself?
No. At the big days in Nazaré, you're using the ski because, you know, your arms are just not fast enough to catch the wave. You, at that speed, at that size, you want a board that's more like a tow board, which is a shorter board made with weight and that is strapped onto your feet. So when you do go down at 70 kilometers an hour, you're strapped in, and like snowboarding, you're not on a boot, but you're strapped in like windsurfers. So that gives you a lot more security to make the drop and to make the wave at that high speed with a lot of lumps in the ocean surface and the water surface. It's never clean, you know, when it's that big, it's always moving and there's a lot of water and things that you have to navigate while going down the face. And also for the rescue, you know, it would be very irresponsible to not kick out of a wave at that size and not have somebody there for you to pick you up. And so just putting all those together, I mean, still the biggest factor is that the waves move too fast, that with just your arms, you would never catch it in the speed that the wave is moving. It would just pass you.
So I don't know if everyone can appreciate the incredible risk inherent with big wave surfing. We're talking waves over 70 feet high. What makes it so dangerous, Maya? Is it these huge waves collapsing on top of you? Is it getting held under and losing consciousness? Like, what would you say is the riskiest element of this?
Hmm. There's a lot of risk, all of the above. But I think what we understand that is the most dangerous is you lose consciousness underwater. And it can be because you exhausted your oxygen. It can be because you hit your head on the sled, on an equipment, on a board, and you blacked out. And if you then rise, which you should, because you do have flotation, you'll be in a very difficult place for rescue. So you have to first find the body, which is quite difficult in a sea that big with the amount of waves and white water going around, to find that body and to be able to recover that body and bring it to the beach to start the CPR. We have very few minutes to do that, and it's an extremely difficult thing. So you do have to have a little bit of luck that your body floats in a place where we find it, where people in the cliffs see it quickly, that we can get to you and we can somehow manage to put your body onto the sled with the help of others, and then we drive your body to the sand, and then we resuscitate. So there's a long process there once you black out. And it's like, I think the number is something crazy, like from all the drownings, like 7% becomes a near drowning, which is somebody that lost consciousness in the ocean and regained it in the sand and went on to live another day. Because once you lose consciousness in the water, it's so complicated. It's such a difficult environment to recover a body and to resuscitate them within those 3 minutes that you have. So that's our biggest concern.
Well, you have to learn to strengthen your lungs so you can hold your breath for several minutes. I read that you're actually able to hold your breath for up to 5 minutes.
4.
Well, I mean, that's impressive enough. I can barely do 1 minute. I guess it's impressive, but it's also scary at the same time. Are there actually scenarios where you can be held underwater for several minutes?
No, what happens is in our world of Holddowns, when we go down with a wave, we're getting smashed and thrown around and punched, and pressures going onto our chest of the water and the water, which means we're losing oxygen. So everything is happening. So with that, if I can stay static on a pool for 4 minutes, you're bringing it down to possibly having enough oxygen to be underwater on a big hold down for 45 seconds, a minute max, because of the amount of oxygen that you lose, and the fact that when you go down, your heart race is not like in a pool. You're not breathing up for 3 minutes and concentrating to give your best. You're like winded, hitting the water, going down. Sometimes you don't even see what happens, and then you're down in the water. So you are not taking a beautiful breath in to go into your static apnea at that point. You're just like, you're either low oxygen or empty tank, and then you're starting your hold down. And then there's a lot that happens in the water. And then when you make it out of that, there's probably more waves behind. So it becomes a little bit of an endurance game, because you have to go down multiple times. You have to endure multiple hold downs, and you have to be able to do somewhat of a recovery from the CO2 and the O2 within 5-10 seconds between every wave. When you come up, you do your recovery, you try to get out the rise of CO2. You get a lot of CO2 when you hold your breath. So you have to exchange those gases and go back down. So you do a little exercise that we train in free diving to be able to endure multiple hold downs.
So what other kind of physical conditioning is required to be at the top of your game?
Everyone does very different things. I surf a lot. I do a lot of water sports, and then I have a gym at home. Mm-hmm. I have my pool training, which is all breath hold and very specific for the hold downs, and gym and bike, which is like for my physical capacities.
So how much time would you say that you're training to prepare to be surfing in the water versus actually surfing?
I train 2 hours maybe a day, 2 hours, and then I do like 2, 3 hours in the ocean. If I do like 6 hours in the ocean, then I train 1 hour physical or nothing, just recover for the next day, just stretch and stuff.
I want to try to understand what draws you to these bigger and bigger waves, and of course, the life-threatening danger that comes along with it. Is it about the sheer physical challenge of being able to ride these huge waves? Or are you somehow attracted to the danger element as well? In other words, do you actually like there being some potential fatal consequence with the pursuit? Not that you've got a death wish, but the fact that it has some element of danger enhances the experience for you somehow.
Well, anything of high consequence makes the reward a little bit more exciting. That's usually how it works for everyone. But for me, it's the energy. It's the fact that I love the ocean, and when the ocean is gigantic, there's nothing more spectacle and special and amazing to watch and to experience. And even the days that I don't surf and I only drive, or maybe I'm injured, or maybe I'm not feeling well and I do just driving for my partner, like for me, just to be a part and to be in the ocean and to experience that and to be a part of that day, it's special. So I think for me, it's more about the ocean, the environment, the lessons, the sensation that I get, like being in the present, being fully focused, going down a wave with that amount of speed, those are things that really attracted me to the sport.
And how fast do you go?
70 kilometers an hour you can go at Nazare.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
You mentioned how when you first started out surfing in Brazil, it was a great way to meet boys because there were only boys doing it. And it seems when you got into big wave surfing years later, there still weren't many women doing this. It was pretty much an exclusive boys club. Did that not deter you at all? Or was there actually a part of you that wanted to crash that party?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was more that. It was like looking at it and being like, again, no girls in this thing. Let's go there. It was more about, and there was also a sense of, I was 17 at the time in Hawaii, and I could see Steph Gilmer and all the pros of my generation, and they were so ahead of me already. They had started when they were 3, 4, 5, and I already had a pretty clear vision that I wasn't gonna make that top level, that I would be satisfied with in the tour. So that wasn't a route I could go. And then when big wave surfing, started presenting itself to me in Hawaii, I thought, wow, I'm very young for this, and there's no women, and this is something that attracts me. Like, I can do this. I would be willing to understand and to learn and to navigate this crazy environment. And I think that's, those things motivated me to break the mold of the big, strong looking Hawaiian man that was the only one believed to go down those massive waves.
Why do you think you wouldn't have been competitive at the world level with small wave surfing?
I think I started late for that. I think that the talent there and the seriousness of the women's level and sport at that time was already, the curve was getting pretty high. And I was 17 already. At that time, you already have sponsors, you're already traveling the world. At 17, you're already a possible future star. And I was nobody. I didn't have that in me.
So let's fast forward. It was October 28th, 2013. You were in Nazaré, where you are right now, surfing a massive wave, and you fell off, you lost consciousness, and you nearly drowned. They say the wave that fell on you had an estimated weight of 160 tons. So just to put that in perspective, that's roughly the same weight as a blue whale. They had to resuscitate you with CPR on the beach. And thank God, Maya, you survived. And of course, are still with us today. So looking back, what went wrong on that day?
So many things. It was my first time here with my team at the time, and we came to explore the place. It was very new in the map of big wave surfing. Garrett McNamara, who established the first world record here in 2010, had started surfing here 3 years before, and they were still kind of learning about the place. Not many people had made the trip here to explore as well. So I think a lack of experience, a will to charge, to try our limits, to test our limits. And we, as a team, we applied what we had at the time and what we worked with in other places like Hawaii, California, Tahiti, to an arena that didn't really accept that kind of teamwork. We needed a lot more. And, it was unfortunately, we had an accident on that first huge day. It was with me, and it became clear very quick the things that, could not be left behind, like the radio, the communication with the cliff, the rescue scenarios, the life jacket that has a O2 cartridge that was just entering the sport at that time. I didn't have one. My life jacket went off through my head. So a bunch of things that were just, inexperience, and, things that I'm glad I had another chance to learn and to be able to fix them all and take steps forward and be able to redefine how I would surf a place like Nazaré and learn and really change my concept of big wave surfing.
I like how your response is to figure out how to surf it again in the future versus my response, which would have been more along the lines of, well, I've checked that box, time to move on from Nazare and big wave surfing and maybe try dancing again.
No, it was too much potential to leave it like that.
Maya, you said that you felt you had a little help that day, and you weren't just referring to the person who towed you to shore and revived you. Do you feel God intervened in some way that day?
Yes. I felt some presence, some peace, some crazy stuff at some point. And it was strong.
And, not in any way to challenge your religious beliefs, but if God played a role in saving you, then you feel God was also involved in the accident itself in some way, maybe to teach you some kind of lesson?
I'm sure that is still the biggest experience I've ever had in life, and it's not one that you can plan to have. So I am super grateful that I experienced that. And it was, incredible, difficult, incredible, painful, but also very eye-opening and important and intense. And I wouldn't change a thing, I really wouldn't, because if you get a chance to see how it ends and, feel like it's going to end and then you come back, a lot of people would want to see how it ends. How do you feel when it ends? How do you feel about saying goodbye to this world? It's not an experience that you can take lightly.
Maya, did that near fatal accident not give you pause at all? Did it in any way question whether it's worth it? Perhaps to at least not push the limit like that anymore?
Oh yeah. It gave me a lot of deep questions that stayed in my brain for many years, many years. I mean, for 4 years, I didn't really push the limits in my sport. I was really doubtful if the day would ever come that I would feel like that was the right thing to do. I had doubts. I had insecurity. I felt like maybe, I was never going to be brave again like that, because I knew what could happen for real. And then, after years of dedicating myself and keeping up with my training and moving here and adapting myself to the place and to the wave, and things just started to, feel more and more natural. In the beginning, it's like stressful. Nobody wants to be facing their fears all the time. It's like, if that feels uncomfortable and really scary, why are you going to be going there every day for many hours a day? It's not like you're like asking for torture. But I also knew that that was the only way through it. If I didn't push through the pain and the memories and the doubts and everything, I wouldn't be able to overcome. And even if I didn't overcome, I would be fine with it. For me, it was about trying. It was about keeping the dream alive. And I was definitely not in the beginning, but later in the last parts of the 4 years, I was definitely looking into other options and like thinking about what else could I do if this doesn't work. If my injuries don't heal completely, like what am I gonna do?
You had 3 pretty invasive spine surgeries from this, right?
Yeah, I had 3 spine surgeries. Yeah.
And then lots of intense and painful rehab. But beyond the physical injuries, you also had to deal with debilitating anxiety disorder and panic attacks. I imagine this must have been a pretty low point in your life.
Yes. When you're limited, I started being limited when the pain became too hard to handle with my spine. And I was limited at not being able to stand up for very long, not being able to sit for very long, not being able to travel and sit on an airplane anymore. And just simple things that I didn't do anymore. And then after, when the spine started to heal after 4 years of injuries and surgeries and stuff, I had the anxiety disorder really became a major part of my life, which, was always there somewhere, but was undiagnosed. And, it would come as episodes and it would go away. So doctors never really diagnosed it, never really said what I had.
Is that when you started to go to therapy?
No, I always did therapy.
You did.
Yeah, I always did. But that's when I started doing psychiatry.
And do you feel it helped?
Well, what helped is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, of course. I think being diagnosed, understanding what you have first is very important, because you can put it out in words. Like, I have this, this is my limitation. This is how far I can go with stress now. Right now, I cannot do that because it's too stressful. I'm going to freak out. So you start understanding the triggers and what the consequences will be. And I think that was probably one of the most important things, was to be diagnosed. And then, of course, starting the treatment, adjusting my life. And yeah, the medicine for me, I was lucky the medicine worked. It's been working for many years. And that's how I handle kind of my situation.
Was the therapy to help you gain some sort of edge in the water? To help you with confidence and concentration? Or just something you've sort of always grown up with?
No. My sister is a psychologist, and my parents put us on therapy since very young. We always had that, therapy was good for us. You talk about your problems, you discuss your frustrations, and it was never really sports related. It was much more life related. And for me, it was important because, I had a very untraditional life, and I liked to have a therapist to talk to. I felt that was important.
Well, you seem very self-aware, so maybe that's all from the years of therapy. So after your near-death experience, Laird Hamilton, who's a pretty big-time surfing legend, suggested that you were in over your head, that at your skill level, you had absolutely no business being out there in those conditions, that you essentially brought this on yourself, Maya. Plenty of other influencers piled on as well. So when you heard comments like that, especially out in the public domain, were you able to take it all in stride, or did those words get to you?
Yeah, it got to me. It always got to me. For some reason, criticism always gets to us.
Sure.
It can be from a source that we will never know who it is on the internet, that has a fake name, and it still gets to us. And but especially coming from icons of the sport, and that was difficult to deal with, but it was also a very important experience for me. I think it made me see certain things, understand certain things, understand, what point he was making that could be a good criticism, and what was the parts that really was more about him than me. I think when we criticize others, a lot of our own frustrations come out too. And for the person being criticized, it's important that we can divide, what is their issues with themselves and what they see reflected through me, and what is that can serve me and like make me a better person. And I tried, with time to really deconstruct his criticism and a lot of people's criticism, people, at least the ones that I admired and that I was hurt by on a deeper level, to see, what could I do to make it worthwhile. If you're gonna hurt, if it's gonna hurt you like that, I want to learn something from it. So I
Sure.
tried to be specific on what could I get from his message that would empower me.
Well, that's fair, and I appreciate your wanting to learn and grow from the accident. But honestly, I sort of wonder if they would have made the same comments had it been a male surfer.
No, of course not.
Because it feels to me, from the outside looking in, like their egos might have been wrapped up in the manliness of tackling these monster waves. And here comes this petite woman coming into the scene, attempting the very same feat. And, perhaps this might have bruised those egos a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like I said, I was not the right person to be doing that.
They could have just as easily, approached you directly out of the public spotlight and offered to help you in some way, maybe to provide some kind of constructive advice.
Yeah, but I also, to not generalize only on him, I also think that we were living a different period in our society. It was before we started to experience the new wave of feminism and the Me Too movement and all the different movements that came and really empowered women and made it harder for men to spill their frustrations on women, especially publicly in a working environment. And I think at that point, it was just the tipping point of it's still acceptable. And then right after it became not acceptable. So I was kind of like that last stretch of like, it still happens. I think it has gotten a lot better now. And I think if it was now, he would have really not felt comfortable to do that, because exactly, they don't do that to men. So why would they do that to women? And for some men, I'm sure they think of that. I'm sure they sit there and they're like, look at this guy. He is not as good as me. Why is he in that condition? But men don't say that about men and CNN. They don't want to go there. Like, they just don't feel comfortable, or I don't know what it is. Like, it's not, they don't feel that's their place to protect another man in the sport. And I think with him, he just felt like it was his right to, be harsh on me and make the assumptions that I wasn't ready, which a lot of his points were right. I mean, the accident did happen because we were, amateurs over here. We were learning, we were exploring. We weren't as prepared as we are today. No way. And of course, and ask him how he did it in the beginning of Jaws. Like, they were testing everything too, from Zodiac to jet ski. Like, there is a point of exploration that you have to pass through that nobody's going to do for you, that you're going to have to learn the hard lessons. And so, yeah, different times, I think it would never happen today.
Well, so I guess the lesson here is time your accidents better, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now I can do a near drowning and nobody will be going to talk shit about me, because now I have 2 world records.
Speaking of which, a few years after this accident, you returned to Nazaré and set a new Guinness World Record for surfing a wave at 68 feet. So here you are, Maya, having nearly lost your life, not knowing whether you'd ever surf again, and now setting a world record. How did that feel to have been able to push through all of that pain and suffering, both physical and mental, and to be standing there as arguably the best female big wave surfer in the world?
Well, I don't think I don't think that's the right thing to say. I mean, you win things, but it doesn't mean you're the absolutely best at a certain thing. It's a very specific. I caught the two biggest waves, so it's specific. I mean, there's great women surfing big waves nowadays. I'm actually very inspired by the women that have become professional in the last 10 years or so. But it's very rewarding, for me to have gone through a 4-year phase where, I had a near drowning experience. I had already a pretty successful career before that, but, to end something that demanded so much of me and that note, it just didn't feel right. Like I left my country when I was young. I lived without mom and dad for, most of my life. I left my friends behind. I learned another language. I learned different cultures. I traveled the world by myself. I learned with difficulty how to navigate a heavily male dominated environment and succeed. So there were a lot of sacrifices and difficulties and challenges that I had overcome to be where I was, and to believe that accident and that experience could just completely break me and take me out of the game. It was too hard for me. Like I couldn't believe it. Like it couldn't be, I was deep inside. I didn't feel like that was the end. So I kept pushing without really knowing the outcome, but it was something in me just felt like that wasn't the end. So to be able to go through such a low time, and long time. I mean, it's rare that you see athletes out of the game for 4 years, and to come back and then to accomplish great things. I mean, 4 years is a long time for an athlete. And to be able to do that and then come back and get, the first world record for us women in my sport, and then to get the second one a couple years later is just, it makes me very happy that I was first, able to persist, physically and mentally, and second, that I had, the small support that I had from my family and certain sponsors and people. And I just feel very grateful that I had a second part of my career.
Mm-hmm. You didn't move to Nazaré till after the accident. Was it just about logistics, making it easier to be in close proximity to the big waves? Or was there something maybe symbolic about the move?
No, it was, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this all the way. It's going to demand everything I have in my body and in my mind to overcome what I'm going through. And the right thing is to be there full time. I mean, not summer, but like for the full 7 months out of the year that it has a chance to break. I have to be there. I have to be in the water. I have to be training. I have to be driving. I have to be surfing. And so I just, it didn't make sense to be anywhere else if the only thing I thought about was to surf Nazare.
So does extreme surfing have some kind of age expiration? How much longer do you think you can go?
Yeah, I see people going like 55 and stuff, but
wow, with those kind of waves?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes. But I see at least another 5 years, especially with the structure I have now. It's pretty comfortable. I live really close to the harbor, and I get to surf a lot here, and the waves get, gigantic. So I get a lot of training, a lot of good days in the winter, and I'm just, I feel home and it feels good.
Have you ever thought about what a post-competitive surfing life might look like?
Yeah, it will be fun. I think it will be a lot of fun. I'll be able to share surfing with, the people I love, and go surf small waves a lot, and be in warm water, tropical water, which I love. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun when I'm ready to do that transition.
The podcast you're on is called The Art of Excellence. I always leave it to my guests to define that word excellence. Maya, what's it mean to you?
Commitment. I think commitment is important. And I think to achieve excellence, there's a lot of commitment that has to be done, has to be practiced towards your craft to achieve some kind of excellence. And, excellence is not perfection, not for me. I think perfection doesn't exist. So excellence is just the greatest you can be.
On that note, actually, do you think your drive is completely internally oriented?
Yes. Yes, I do get a little boost when I see somebody do something that I want to do, or get my ass kicked. I mean, there's always like a little flare there. It's impossible not to feel it. We all are very particular. Nobody's ever going to have the same experiences, the same life, the same perspective as anyone other than you. It's how to become your best self, because that's all we really have. What's inside.
I love that answer. Honestly, I've loved every minute of this.
Thank you.
Other than wishing you had a better shark story, of course.
I'm glad I don't have.
I am so glad you survived that nightmare and somehow, some way, use that experience to strengthen your resolve and come back even stronger. Maya, I have no doubt you are an amazing female role model for women all over the world. But you want to know something? To me, you are just an incredible role model, period.
Oh, thank you.
Really, really enjoyed it, Maya. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening. Okay, don't go yet, please. 2 favors. I ask simply 2 favors. One, if you could please download the iTunes app. You could do it on your phone. You can do it on the computer. Take 60 seconds and leave a review. It means a lot. 2, you can find my episodes on several social media sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Find the one that you like the most. Find the one where you tend to have a lot of friends and followers. And if you could please either share it in the case of Facebook and LinkedIn, or retweet it on Twitter, that would mean the world to me. So those are the 2 asks I have. I love putting together this podcast. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Thank you so much, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.